Asia for my own use. So
I'm all set.
all right. Can you folks see my screen all right?
Yep.
All right. So what I've been looking at is looking at video within education through the lens of cognitive load theory, and how simple tools may not lend themselves to people necessarily exemplifying good principles for managing cognitive load. And this is no fun. There we go. Sorry, folks. A little bit of stage fright, I guess. All right. So first off, I guess, particularly for James, so that I don't induce a stroke, I'm going to conflate the term video to basically any series of moving images accompanied generally by audio. So I understand I'm making that conflation, and I apologize to the purists in the room. Historically, video in classroom is shared with video in education is shared within the classroom. And it's shown to a captive audience as part of the sage on the stage style of teaching, a one-to-many means of distributing information. Other than students asking clarifying questions in classrooms after the video is presented, there could be no room for interaction on the video. Furthermore, video is a teacher's tool. This wasn't a method of students to engage material. The notation of student material, so the notation of students made, the notion of video made by students as projects would take some time to come to on its own because it wasn't viable, and available only in the classroom. So early on, actual use of film would have made a review of material by students nearly impossible. And later, the advent of VHS and DVD, these materials could be made available more easily, but within a very limited scope. And generally speaking, video within this educational environment, like you can see in that image there, would have been produced by a film company. This isn't a unique scenario. With the buyout of our educational system by companies like Pearson, we're familiar with the benefits that big production companies can bring to education. They have resources most teachers don't, and the ability to create and design material at a level most teachers haven't the time or skill to do. The downside, of course, becomes that they often contain material that's irrelevant to a professor or a teacher's specific teaching desires. And, this leaves teachers queuing through material, wading through material that holds little relevance, and wasting precious time. And more importantly, students' cognitive resources, attention and such. Now, finally, strictly speaking, educational material has been boring, whether because of the irrelevance of the material or the dry transatlantic presentation. That material was often unengaging and left young minds to wander. As discussed previously, without the means by which for students to play back such a video themselves, once that opportunity was gone, it was truly gone. Now, video today in education is everywhere. Video is a fundamental part of the lives of most people in developed countries. It's a medium with which we can naturally relate, and most individuals can consume when properly designed with ease. Video is ubiquitous. With over 300 hours of video being uploaded to YouTube every minute, it's easy for one to believe that there exists a video for that, regardless of what that is. And if there isn't, we no longer live in the before times when we couldn't fill that gap. Video creation is almost as easy as video consumption now. With so much video available, casual observation makes it obvious that all of this material is also available anytime, anywhere. Whether you're in a class, sitting in traffic, waiting in your doctor's office, or shoved under your sink trying to figure out what that weird fastener is due to laptops, mobile devices, and Wi-Fi, as well as cellular data, video is available all the time, and we're using it. And there's 3.25 billion hours of YouTube videos are watched every month, with 8 out of 10 18 to 49-year-olds watching YouTube in an average month. So video is producible by anyone now. With the advances in technology, almost anyone can create a video. And considering that 77% of Americans possess smartphones, barriers for posting videos online have dropped significantly since the days requiring expensive and difficult to use equipment. But, what hasn't changed? Well, even these home-produced videos contain a lot of irrelevant material. It's understood by almost everyone that watches user-created content on YouTube that much of what is posted is irrelevant material. So much so that one Reddit user posits an axiom that's become known as the Wadsworth constant, which is a tongue-in-cheek notion that the first 30% of almost any instructional video on YouTube can be skipped without actually missing any relevant content. And because of this reason, video, oops, my bad, video is still boring. And boring is to say it fails to engage the viewer by introducing, it fails to engage the viewer, and it does so by introducing extraneous material that neither enlightens or entertains. And this brings me to the notion of cognitive load theory. Now, cognitive load theory is an attempt to explain the amount of mental effort being made in learning new information or establishing new schema. And with the suggested outcome that reducing mental effort or cognitive load during information acquisition will increase schema development. Now, central to cognitive load theory is the notion that while humans have vast resources of long-term memory, working memory, often referred to as short-term memory by laypersons, is quite limited. And one of the challenges we face when learning new tasks is how to overcome working memory's limitations to establish new schemas. And cognitive load consists of three parts. There's intrinsic load, germane load, and extraneous load. The total effect of these different portions of load is additive and must be kept beneath the learner's cognitive capacity to avoid cognitive overload, a situation in which the learner's intended cognitive processing exceeds the learner's available cognitive capacity. So intrinsic cognitive load refers to the inherent level of difficulty and amount of interplay between concepts being studied, or element interactivity. And the less element interactivity between concepts, the less impact it has on cognitive load. The more complex the task being studied, the higher the effective impact on cognitive load. So given the nature of intrinsic load, this is an area where, as an instructional designer, generally there's little control beyond chunking and scaffolding mechanisms. Now, extraneous cognitive load refers to the unnecessary additional demands placed on the limited cognitive resources of the learner due to choices made in the presentation of material. So energy expended in processing extraneous cognitive loads are diverted away from the processing of intrinsic and germane cognitive loads, and thus should be avoided as much as possible. Now, as mentioned previously, impact on cognitive load is additive, so minimizing extraneous cognitive load is generally most desirable. Now, by the nature of extraneous load, this is an area where the instructional designer has a great deal of impact on managing cognitive load. Presenting material with both verbal and pictorial cues, for instance, one can expand working memory. Reducing split attention effect that impacts cognitive load by making use of dual as opposed to unitary modes of information coding is also one example of how instructional designers can easily reduce extraneous load. Germane cognitive load is the load to be, whereas extraneous cognitive load is intended to be limited wherever possible, germane load is to be promoted, as its goal is to direct the learner's attention to relevant schemas. That's to say, mental effort expended on realizing how the various schema fit together. So to quote Sweller, although both can be altered by instructional interventions, extraneous cognitive load reflects the effort required to process poorly designed instruction, whereas germane cognitive load reflects the effort that contributes to the construction of schemas. So appropriate instructional designs decrease extraneous cognitive load, but increase germane cognitive load. So guiding questions and reflective contextual cues of use of video is one means by which a teacher can increase germane load. All right, so video at Geneseo, we've got a lack of direction. Effective video application within education successfully manages cognitive load through the appropriate choices in video production and design. Choices of video production are influenced by resources available and should be coupled with appropriate application of basic instructional design principles. At Geneseo, access to the appropriate tools is seldom a problem. However, understanding and implementation of basic instructional design is often lacking. And this is primarily due to limited human resources. At Geneseo, we have limited human resources available to assist with the creation and implementation of video. And as such, teachers and learners are often left to their own devices when creating video. So the result is that those devices vary greatly. The point of this project is to analyze samples of Geneseo-created video using the three primary methods of video creation at our disposal through the lens of cognitive load and how applying basic instructional design principles could help manage cognitive load. From that analysis, I hope to construct a manual that would be of use to members of a similarly equipped campus in the implementation of video in education. Now, the three tools of video creation, and one thing to keep in mind, for any tool to be effective, it cannot exceed in complexity one's capacity to use it. In the creation of video, this philosophy is no less true. With limited human resources devoted to the assistance of video creation on Geneseo's campus, it's important that those seeking the use of video have access to tools that coincide with their ability to leverage technology at a level of complexity in line with their level of ability to attain their desired outcome. And that's to say that those who aspire to create video need to be able to implement a tool that meets their technical capabilities. For this reason, we prescribe primarily three different tools of video production to the members of our campus seeking to create video. And the first is a simple camera capture and edit system. And this is just a traditional camera capture and editing of video, which has come a long way over the years and still offers the most versatility in video creation. With the ability to use a camera, whether standalone, handheld, micro camera, or part of a mobile device, in any situation, the user has a level of flexibility unavailable to them in the other two tools that we recommend. And with this level of versatility comes additional levels of complexity, including scouting locations, lighting, sound concerns, video capture, potential post-production issues, export and hosting problems. These are concerns that have faced video creators in one fashion or another throughout the history of video editing, yet are still given little thought by most prior to their first foray into video creation. The process can be frustrating, time-consuming, and discouraging when poorly done. However, the results can be quite enjoyable and engaging and encouraging when done properly. The second tool we have is a screen capture studio. And this lecture capture style of video creation captures the on-screen content the instructor is presenting and pairs it with audio. This is most commonly used for narrating slide decks. As demonstrated by Wang et al., this style of presentation, when done properly, is also an effective means of instruction. While this sort of video is often injected with picture-in-picture style of the presenter, it's been shown to increase extraneous cognitive load when doing so. From a purely cognitive load theory perspective, this does not speak to the possible benefits of increasing social presence in an online or hybrid environment, but this form of video can have great impact as a means of supplemental instruction or just-in-time learning. Now, while Geneseo makes licenses of Camtasia, a form of screen capturing software, I'm actually using it right now to capture this presentation, available to our instructors with a demonstrated need, the software is costly, and faculty and students are encouraged to make use of the single screen capturing studio we have. It's equipped with an iMac, Camtasia, microphone, and document camera in a small sound-resistant room. It's established that we've established on campus. It's readily available during normal business hours. The drawbacks of the use of this sort of system include a fairly steep learning curve, the need for an understanding of media design principles, access to the software, preparation, and time. Similar barriers to using a camera capture and edit style of video exist here as well. The video must be quote-unquote shot, edited, exported, and hosted. Ultimately, this style of video creation requires a level of dedication as the skills to use the system require time to develop. And our third tool is a one-button studio, just like Penn State's creation, if you're familiar with it. I've got a link at the bottom if you'd like to get more information on it. But this is the simplest means by which to create video on Geneseo's campus, and it's the use of the one-button studio as a scaled-down replica of Penn State's one-button studio, which, quoting their page, is a simplified video recording setup that can be used without any previous video production experience. The design of the studio allows you to create a high-quality and polished video project without having to know anything about lights and cameras. You only need to bring your flash drive with you and push a single button. Now, while the simplicity of this design cannot be overstated, there is literally only one button at the most basic level of use. While offering the least versatility and options for creating the video by nature of the limited studio space and camera angle, at its most basic level of implementation, it requires almost nothing in the way of training or video creation knowledge to produce video. However, when coupled with a small amount of video editing knowledge, the One Button Studio becomes a powerful tool, allowing users to incorporate green screen technology to enhance their videos. Once again, the ease of use of technology does not mean the effective creation of a video in terms of managing cognitive load. So, with video playing a part in education in many ways, from lecture capture, talking head videos, as well as student assignments, for any number of possible outcomes, things have gotten to a point where bad video just isn't good enough. I intend to analyze a selection of typical Geneseo videos that have been implemented in a variety of ways and compare them to realistic design principles with the final goal of creating a practical manual to help guide novice video producers at Geneseo specifically, but any similarly equipped campus, through the creation of most types of common video. So the videos to be analyzed, will consist of a variety of faculty, staff, and student shot video, including just-in-time training for the use of a calculator emulator in a math class, our IT department screen captures regarding the specific use of the elements of our learning management system, camera capture and edit videos of some wacky informational videos on information security, examples of stand-up talking head videos, an American Sign Language gloss, student-made video from our Geneseo Insomnia Film Festival, as well as student-made video for an Education 316 course in special education. Now, while not all the video has a direct teaching learning component, each video plays a part in higher education, and it either follows or fails a certain design principle. Taking these principles and applying them into a practical manual could be of value to future video creators. I expect that in most ways, the recommendations for how these videos can manage cognitive load and increase engagement will be fairly similar throughout. However, that doesn't mean that the practices are readily known or followed by the average creator of video at Geneseo. And the final project, while the heart of it is very Geneseo-centric, the video and tools I'm examining aren't significantly different than work being done at some of my colleagues like Brockport, Fredonia, Alfred, and I suspect many other institutions of similar sizes. For reasons discussed by Dr. Schneider during an early Zoom session, I intend to keep this project personal until completion, at which point I might migrate the final bits of it into our Geneseo Confluence wiki space for use by our Geneseo community. Until then, I expect that I'll host the information in a simple blog format, such as Blogger or something else. I don't have a lot of HTML background, so I don't know how interested I am in pursuing the notion of building a website. But challenges that I expect to come across: consumer blogs are limited and may prevent the necessary interactivity of an online manual. The limited sources of Geneseo video from which I hope to draw may lead me to looking to video outside of Geneseo, compiling all the information. So I don't expect that I'm going to be building all of the how-tos or the principal guides. I expect that I'd be kind of implementing tools that we have at our own disposal, like lynda.com, some vendor resources, like Camtasia does a wonderful job of keeping up to date their support videos, as well as some Geneseo specific instructions, how to use our particular tools, and also accounting for the variety of video needs. I cannot account for every way that an individual would ever want to implement video. So we'll be limiting ourselves to a few different, like class assignment videos, talking head lectures, maybe some just-in-time training, maybe even just how to do a straight-up single cam shot for recording an event for posterity's sake. Many videos made on campus are less directly instructional than informational. So a lot of the videos that I'm going to be looking at, they're not necessarily designed specifically to be part of a grander course. So that kind of flubs some of what I'm talking about here. Finally, building a practical manual needs to engage both learners and teachers. Too much theory will turn some off. Is the discussion of the cognitive load theory pertinent to a student creator? Perhaps, perhaps not. Too little theory will turn off others. Does limited theory reference decrease the authority with which teachers view the material? These are some of the concerns that I have going forward. And that's pretty much where I'm at.
I have a question. You're saying you're going to cover sort of basic principles for designing a video. Am I right?
I'm going to include principles within a manual for the practical creation of video in a higher education. Yeah.
Okay, so what are those principles? I'm
Well,
sorry.
some of the principles, NYU has done a great job on making a manual and just addressing video theory. It was something Steve shared with me a while ago, and they've done a good job of addressing things like coherence principles, signaling principles, redundancy, spatial cognitive principle, talking about things like, split attention effect, temporal cognitivity principles, segmenting, a chunking video, a multimedia principle, personalization principle, people learning better from multimedia lessons when words in a conversational style rather than being presented in a formal style. A number of small little principles that people might not think about.
Okay, and you're going to show how to implement those. Right?
Well, we're going to talk about it. I don't know that I have the necessary time to go and create examples for everything.
Okay.
But furthermore, I've been on good faith. I've been provided the rights to use a number of videos from colleagues here on campus. I do not want to publicly call them out for applying bad principles of video. So for the purposes of the paper, I'm going to be, taking screen caps and linking to videos and saying, okay, look, watching this professor drone on for an hour and 10 minutes does not make for great video. Here are some of the principles he violates. I would never do that to him in a public setting such as a website. So, okay. I guess that's a challenge that I didn't address within my
well, no, at least I see where you're going. And Catherine's got a question I want to get to in a second, but I did want to ask you, I just wanted to suggest you may want to include scaffolding in there, because scaffolding says you have to start at a basic level and move in your level of complexity to greater points. And that's sort of just a standard thing. If you think about it, in any class, you start with the general and then you move to the specific. But you always want to remember that you're not just starting somewhere, you're actually starting usually at the beginning, at this lower level and moving up. But let me just ask.
Russ, I would point out, I just shared my lit review with you in that in that folder. And in the lit review, I do touch upon scaffolding briefly as one of the processes that we would implement. But I want to ask you, when you say I shouldn't forget about scaffolding, do you mean for my own purposes of where I'm taking the project, I should be sure to scaffold what I'm building, or make sure that I present that as one of the principles that
both of those,
okay.
But the main thing is, a key area is you always move up the level of complexity. If you start too high, you lose people. If you start too low or you stay too low, then you bore people. So you have to find that point, which is difficult in any group, particularly if you have a mixed group, that people are at a level. But it is a challenge every professor faces, and it's something that you want to at least raise as an issue. But let's see, Catherine's got a question. Will anyone be bent out of shape by your public critique of their video? Will you be including them in your practical manual? So I'm just reading this without interpreting. I got to think about this. If so, will you get permission from the video creators to include the ones you looked at, or won't you need those? Does that make sense to you?
I'm sorry. I've been digging around trying to find the chat window, because this view is a little different for me than what I'm used to, being a simple observer. So I'm just now following.
I think I get it. So Catherine sort of said, what if you
could you guys hear me okay?
Oh, okay. There you go.
Okay, I guess my mic is working. So you addressed the first one already, John. That's fine.
Sure.
I was just wondering, you were just saying that Steve gave you something from NYU that talked about all these principles. And my other question is just, how will your work be different from what you got from Steve? Because if they did it already at NYU, what's, is there something special about the tools you use there that is going to make it worth your time?
So what they did was just break down principles, and they did a very nice job of it. But I'm looking at what they call their 12 principles of multimedia, where they just define them. What I hope to do is intertwine a how-to manual of using the tools that we have available, some suggestions as to what you might use them for in the Geneseo environment, and then contextualize these principles. The NYU page is very academic, and it's a wonderful page. When Steve originally showed it to me, I almost threw out my project because of exactly that. I was overwhelmed. I'm like, this is much better than anything I could ever do on a purely academic basis. But hopefully, I'm looking to make a more practical manual as part of this. We're kind of got one foot in the thesis area and one foot in the project. It's, Steve and I have talked briefly about this, but it's kind of coming out to be a little bit of both.
Okay.
But the idea is my manual is going to be more practical.
Yeah, I was going to respond to that, though, Joe, because just the way that you talk about it. The way that
Steve, I'm sorry, you're very low. I'm having a hard time hearing you at my end.
Yeah, so the way that you introduce, is that better?
It's better, yes.
Yeah, so the way that you introduce and present your topic, your passion is mostly on the first half, not so much on the second. And so I'm wondering, why don't you just take the NYU thing, plus your own research on cognitive load, make a scale or a analysis piece, watch a bunch of videos from Geneseo and score them on that scale, and then answer the question at the very beginning of your presentation, which is, how are we doing with video at Geneseo? And your conclusion might be, we're doing great because we're reducing, the good cognitive load, or what, you know what I mean? Or we're not doing so well, and this is what we could do to get better. But this is and then you don't have to even talk about the specific videos that you actually watched, and you don't have to deal with any of the specific people, but it's just like a generic, Geneseo is a case study of a community that's got technology, and it's got norms and culture and values and experiences, and that's why it does what it does. And so you take a moment in time and say, okay, I'm going to look at 10, 20, 50, 100 videos, whatever it is, and score them on something, or at least evaluate them on a common set of questions, and then draw conclusions about, to answer the question, how are we doing at Geneseo with video, or with respect to cognitive load, and skip the second half. Because it seems to me that you've got some real passion and a really interesting question that you could ask, really gather some data and answer the question.
I like that idea. And it's been an ongoing theme throughout my time at IDT, is kind of in for a penny, in for a pound. Every Saturday morning when I'm sitting there from 5 a.m. until 2 p.m. in the afternoon working on my homework assignment, my wife always comes over my shoulder and says, "Why are you putting so much effort into this? I know you got an A 6 hours ago." And I think the answer to your question is really, I just don't know when to stop. And this project has become kind of a personal challenge to me. I really like that idea, and I may run with that. But to give you an answer as to why I haven't been able to let go doing two parts of this so far, it's kind of because I've been grappling this thing in a death knell.
Yeah, I think if you want to get it done, you kind of have to pick one of them, and I think your passion's on the first one, and you can't do the second one without the first anyway. So, you're welcome to do them both. It's just going to take you a while.
Yeah, and time's not really on my side. For personal reasons, I really do need to finish this semester.
Yeah, so if you want to finish this semester, you really got to cut it down, narrow it in half. Otherwise, it's fine. I wouldn't mind talking to you about it for another year or two, but I think you can get it done this semester. But you really got to narrow the frame. But I think the thing with the questions, and go back to your slide where you got cognitive load. It's like slide 3, I think. Nope, slide 4. Yeah, so between that slide 4. Intrinsic, extraneous, and germane, and then go to the NYU where they've got 15 principles. You've got 20, 25 sort of metrics that you can apply against a video.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And I don't know, something like that. It's a little quantitative. a little less ethnographic, but it will get, they'll be in a spreadsheet and you'll be able to get it done.
Okay. I may need to bother you on, developing that, developing that breakdown of questions and such. But I see where you're coming from, and you're absolutely right. About having to do one to do the other, and doubling my efforts there.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm interested in getting you done, and I'll try to speak up, Catherine. I'm not sure why my microphone is flipping on and off. So I think we have gone to the end of your time as well.
We have. I will give things back here.